New.
New.
That's recording.
It's recording.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Hear2Listen podcast. Today it's myself opening up. It's Max. I've got Leon.
Yo, yo.
We got Jack.
Yo.
And we've got Adam. And
Hello.
Oh, sorry, I didn't let you say hello, Adam. See, it is new to me. We do normally open up and Adam says how excited we are to be back in the room, and we always tell you how it is. And once again, walking into the podcast room
We're
today,
very excited.
Very excited. Why are we excited, lads? Why are we excited today?
We got new sofas.
We got new sofas. You are not able to see it at the moment, but visuals will be coming fairly shortly. I believe we have a camcorder.
Three green screens.
Is it even called
That sounded like the 80s.
Is it called It's not, is it? They don't even call them
Video
camcorders.
camera?
No, that's even worse.
That's the 90s.
Nah, do you know what? I think I
Camera.
typed in camcorder.
All right,
I
so there we
actually think I
go.
did.
There we go. We have got visual equipment, I'm going to say. We've got a camera turn.
And mic stands.
Mic stands.
Green screen.
So
Lights.
I reckon
We're evolving.
within the next 2 episodes, you will get to see us in our true form, which we are really looking forward to.
Don't hold us to that.
But yeah,
Maybe not to.
please don't hold us
Yeah,
to
there
that.
might be some social distancing restrictions as well, but we'll figure those out too.
But we're not breaching those restrictions at the moment,
Absolutely
are we?
not.
No, I think we've got at least 1.5 meters, 2 meters
Mhm.
apart. Yeah, I can see Adam over the back there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see Leon in the
Max, I
corner.
can't even see you.
Hey. Right, so lads, what's occurring today? What are we talking about today? I think
Well,
So I thought we was going to go through some like home ownership or housing stuff and being average living wages maybe and stuff like that, and to talk about
100%.
realities. And
I think we should take it from the beginning.
Yeah.
And take it from not from our perspective as such, but maybe from a young person's perspective, say a younger person than we are, potentially the ages that we work with leading up to the ones that we recruit for staff, because those sort of ages are potentially looking to maybe move out and all that sort of stuff. And
Sorry, Matt. If we're going to look at their perspective, can you remember when you were 16, what you thought your life would be like when you was 25?
I was in my first flat at 17.
Impressive. I couldn't have dreamed that.
I was. When I look back, that scares me. Just saying that now, I think, oh my days, especially because we work with 16, 17-year-olds, and I think, why the hell did my mum and dad think it was okay for me to be living on my own? What's going on? Or was I that bad that they just wanted to get rid of me? And I think it's a bit of both, to be fair. I think it was a bit of both. But I did move back after 3 years. That was crazy.
What about, did you think you would have had your life together by like 25, 30? Like you'd have your house, your car, everything.
I would like to say right here, right now, that I still haven't got my life fully
No,
together.
me neither, mate.
But I never in a million years would have expected to be in the position I'm in the house that I'm in, with the job that I've got, and the stuff that we do. If you'd have asked me 5 years ago, I'd have literally laughed in your face, and said, "You're mad. I'm going to be mucking this stuff up the walls for the rest of my life." I used to be a plasterer, for those that don't know. But no, the reason I thought about taking it from a young person's perspective is simply because I see something on Question Time, and it was saying about how this is basically a lost generation. You look at what young people, not just young people, it's not just young people that have lost out during this pandemic, but look at, just if we're talking about the young people at the moment, they've lost out on all that education, or they're losing out on all this education, which is then in turn going to affect their employability. So it's going to make it even harder, because we all know at this time before this happened, it was hard to, one, get on the property ladder, and to afford privately renting and all that sort of stuff. How is this going to affect that? This is going to be such an impact, surely, of what they are going to be able to achieve in the future.
Well, during lockdown, I also watched the news, and everyone watched the news anyway.
I don't watch the news.
I don't really.
Well, when it was bad, everyone was watching the news. Well, I was anyway, quite a lot. And there was this article that come up, and it was saying that I think like 20% of 28 to 32-year-olds still live at home with their parents. And I was one of those until recently, and that's just like, I suppose, another sign of the times, and how like expensive everything's getting.
I think that's going to be the way forward for a fair few.
It's hard though, because you could either choose, so I'm 21 years old, I could choose to rent, and I could comfortably afford renting a place. But then do I really want to rent a place and then sacrifice being able to save money monthly to then eventually be able to get a mortgage on a house? And it's like a decision that you got to make. Like, do you want to move out? Or do you want to be able to sort of like,
how
look
much
forward
do
in
you
the
want
future?
your freedom?
Yeah, it is. Or how bad is it at home? Like, how bad do you need to get out?
Yeah.
For me, it's not bad at all. So I'm stuck. not bad
How
thing.
old was you, Adam, when you first?
I think I was about 25, definitely a late bloomer, and maybe the sort of earliest generation of the stay at home for probably more than you should kind of age. But that was not unusual with friends of mine. I had stepped out a little bit by lodging, so I did lodging like for a couple of years, I think, and then that didn't work out, and I was well gutted because it meant I had to move back with my mum, and that felt like such a massive back step because I'm keen on evolution. I'm keen on like progressing forward all the time. But what softened the blow a bit was I must have walked into where I worked at the time, and they had something called a key home scheme. They noticed the glum face and said, "Oh, you should try this kind of key home scheme." And those that don't know, it's a shared ownership system where you buy sort of you get a mortgage on like half the property.
Is that what you got, Leon?
Yeah.
And you pay rent on the other. And in the early days, I thought, hang on a minute, what, own like half my house? Is there like a line drawn down the middle of it, sort of thing? But no, it's like, you pay one and then the rent on the other. And it was the only option for me as a single person at the time. I think a lot of my mates were only considering like moving in with other mates and all the problems that might cause as well. So it was attractive, and it worked out financially like really well. And I'm still like in the same property. I absolutely love where I live at the moment. And that's an option. I don't know what kind of options there are at the moment for that. Like it used to be only available for key workers, as they call it. And key workers was a kind of broad term for like somewhat linked to government. So at the time I worked within the prison service. So there was nurses and doctors and all that sort of stuff that had access to it. So it seems, Leon, I know you're a newcomer to this, that you don't necessarily need to be perhaps, which sounds like an evolution in itself.
Yeah, well, I think that I'd say they're quite common now, especially.
It's loads, isn't there? There's
With
so
all
many
the-
different ones out
There's
there.
flats, houses, all around the villages that I live in Bedfordshire. They're popping up all over the place.
What's your percentage, if you don't mind me asking?
40%.
40, okay, yeah. So I was 50-50. And I remember at the time where I got that and I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll keep buying like shares in the property over time. 11 years later, I haven't, because you just don't have expendable income. And I think that the times where you might have a bit of cash, you'll probably, I need a new car now, that kind of thing. It never became that initial dream. And the financial implications of like, if I buy a couple of % more, how much difference is that going to make to my monthly payments was so minimal, it didn't seem worth it. So
Yeah.
What would you do though if you come home one day and you got 50-50 thing going on, and you come home and you realise that the upstairs has been converted into 2 flats? They put a front door at the top of the stairs and said, well, technically, mate, we own half this house. So you've got the downstairs, we've got the upstairs. Like, what's the legal rights for that? Because you don't own half the house.
Yeah, and you're 40, so you got 40%.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that they can just get you out whenever they want you out, sort of thing, just because they own more?
No,
I don't think so. So I think
He hopes not.
well, I
Didn't read the fine print, did you, Leon?
I read the full fine print.
See, Adam did.
Well, he reads his bloody car manual. Of course he read the full print.
I had to. I kind of just had to educate myself. I mean, that is something that I found quite intimidating. Here's something I'm about to do that I've got no experience in. I haven't done like a course on it or anything like that, and negotiating your way around things like stamp duty. And I just found myself quite liking the fact that a lot of my interactions were with people that I could ask those questions, because in their own jobs they just reel off information. And it's like, hang on a minute, that was well fast, I need to just back you up, and I don't know this, I don't know that. Yeah. And they were very responsive. Ultimately they want your money, of course, the bank people, but that I had like high value, and I've like I wouldn't say remortgage, but like, you kind of the rate that you have for your mortgage, you can like renegotiate that at a later date. And I did that recently. So those kind of things are quite nice when you like save a few quid a month because you've modified the mortgage that you've got as well. So, but it's something you just forget about after a while. You just this outgoings and all that.
Yeah, when he's talking about that stamp duty and stuff like that, because the scheme that I was on for first-time buyers, you now don't have to pay stamp duty.
Huh.
And I had quite a lot of savings in a Help to Buy ISA. Okay. So then that basically paid for all my solicitor's fees as well.
Nice.
So it just made it a lot easier for me.
That's the stuff people don't realise, the extra costs, like the solicitor fees and stuff. How much was that, Leon?
So that probably would have saved me another 3 or 4 grand on top of like the deposit I had for the share.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That sounded like you're planning quite far ahead of the buying then, because that sounded like I've got this thing and I've got that thing. And how, for the listeners, how did you go about doing that? What?
That's a good question. So
You can't do it anymore.
I was actually watching a podcast must have been about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, and they had a finance guy in there with him. The guy was just basically questioning the finance guy to help give other people better advice on how to deal with their money. And he was just sort of talking about like how like you need to know how much you've got coming in and how much you've got going out and how much you're going to have left over to spend on your food and stuff like that. Yeah, cash flow and how much you can put away. And then it was just like, if you're not putting money into the account that I was putting it in, I think it's finished now, but they're still working up until 2030. If you put £200 in, the government give you £50 towards your solicitor fees. So like over 3 or 4 years I did that, I just put £200 in every month, didn't take any money out of it, and it built up quite nicely, and then that covered all my solicitor's fees. So, but yeah, that account, unfortunately, I don't think it's available anymore, but I think that ran out last year at some point.
I still got one.
Yeah, I made Jack get one because...
Didn't tell me about it though, did ya?
That's what I mean. I've had that account for what?
Well, your brother should have
now?
told you about it, mate.
He's already living in the house. He's done.
The thing is, on that, I wasted, like, listening to you boys, you got percentages in property. I haven't at the moment, but what I have got, I've got a lifetime tenancy with the council. Been fortunate enough to get on the council list, and I've, the rent's like it's about 890 quid, just under 900 quid a month. I think I worked it out somewhere. It works out about 10 grand or something a year, which I'm never going to own that. But then I've got a lifetime tenancy. So when I said to Grand Union, big up Grand Union, used to be arrogant, it's Grand Union now, yeah. A lifetime tenancy is basically, that's ours for life. Like, we've been with the council now for maybe 9 years, maybe a bit longer actually, thinking about it. But yeah, we've got ourselves what's called on the contract a lifetime tenancy.
I was thinking, Max, like that's rent, right?
That's rent.
So how do you feel about the argument that often got put to me when I was thinking about buying was if you're renting, you're throwing money away.
This is how how do you? Yeah. Before I got on the council, before I got offered I only got offered that lifetime tenancy when I got the keys to the new place, which we moved into 9 months ago. So we was just renting, and that did used to get me. I used to say to people, I'm not worried about that, not worried about it, chucking money away, rah, rah. But if you look at, say, 17 when I first moved out, I was renting privately. That weren't through council. I remember paying 480 quid a month. That was for a 1-bedroom. For those of you that know Biggleswade, the car wash.
Yes, I remember that by Edward
I
Peak.
lived above there, right? It was amazing. I woke up every morning from the jet washers. Like, literally, it was awful. 480. Was there for about 2 years. I then got a 2-bed that was opposite Stratton School. Yeah, pretty much opposite Stratton School, and that was upstairs. Had no garden, nothing. That was 700 quid. I was paying 750 quid a month to some guy to rent 2 bedrooms. The smallest bedroom, you could fit a table and a chair in it. It was tiny. You had no garden, like I say. I then got on the council. I was very fortunate for that. Yeah, the price that I pay and the support and the stability. Is it stability? I feel being with the council, for example, people look down on the council and that sort of stuff. That doesn't bother me in the slightest, because if something does go wrong with the boiler or with something else and it's something that the council have put in, that gets replaced. In the past, that saved me 6 grand. On my last property that I was living at, the boiler went, we found out it was a combi boiler that they put in there, a £3,000 boiler. And then at the new place, when we moved in, we noticed that it's fairly new. It's quite a modern build. I think it's about 3 years old. And I'm not joking. Like, again, all the stuff that's in there, someone would have had to buy. Do you know what I mean? And especially if it goes wrong. I know it sounds wrong and some people probably moan about this.
It's a huge expense, though. I'm terrified of mine going.
But this is the thing. I don't need to worry about it, Adam, unless I put a hole in it through some schoolboy error. But I don't know how that would happen. But if I broke it myself, I'd have to pay for it. But if it breaks through fault of its own, or the gas man come around 2 days ago. He did not care about social distancing. He had no mask. I was literally quite thrown in the sense that he just bowled in, started checking around the boiler and all this sort of stuff. Had a good chat with him. But yeah, he was just like, honestly, like, these boilers, they're the best that you can get. And I'm like, no way. And he was like, yeah, he goes, I've got this in my own house. And I'm like, no way. I'm sitting there like, yeah. But we've been good tenants. I don't know whether that's how you get the lifetime tenancy. I don't know why they offer it.
With the council, if you, let's say you lost your job and you couldn't pay the rent, what would happen? I would
pretty much be covered.
Yeah.
Which, again,
that is another
people will be looking at me on listening right now going, how have you got that? But actually, it's just, it is how it is. That's what it is. And also, I don't know if we get it on the new property. When we was on the old one, when it got to a certain time of the year, if you paid your rent every single month and never went into arrears, you get the Christmas period free.
No way.
I don't think it's the same at the place we're at, because although we're still under Grand Union, I don't know. I think Sarah said it might be different, but that was crazy. Just stuff like that.
Yeah, that is good. That is good.
Yeah, that's good.
Leon, what made you not go with rent?
Because I suppose I have to sort of explain a bit about my situation, sort of what's happening. So I was living in at my stepdad's quite comfortably. But same again what Max was saying, I probably didn't have the freedoms as Max did, just to sort of do what he wants. So I suppose living under his roof with my two sisters. Although that is sort of a 4-bedroom house, so it's kind of big enough for me and my sisters and everyone to sort of have our own space. But yeah, girlfriend got pregnant. So luckily I had been saving, but it sort of just rushed us along. So we was looking at renting, and when we was looking at renting, it was coming up the same prices as the shared ownership. But at the time, I just...
What's your mic on the mic?
Oh, sorry. At the time, I think it's quite a confidence thing when you're going through like mortgage and stuff like that for the first time as well, because you don't actually know what you can afford, and it's quite scary.
It's a gamble. It's a leap.
Yeah,
I found.
And you're going into a world where people are probably talking about big numbers, which I don't. That might scare me. So it was just more about finding out, and then once we'd sort of took that step and made that phone call and sort of spoke to someone, and they explained how it works and stuff like that. Turned out you didn't actually need that bigger deposit, but what is a big deposit? I suppose, yeah. What is a big deposit?
Well, how was you feeling though, Leon? Because you literally had all this going on just before lockdown hit, pretty much, didn't it?
Yeah.
How was you in your head? I would have been freaking out.
Yeah. So
how was you?
My thoughts were, we need to get this done whilst we've got both salaries, so we're more likely to get accepted for the mortgage before Karine had the baby.
See, that's mad. I would have been going, I need to get out. I don't want to be doing this. And the only reason...
So the other option is, because we weren't on the council list, so we could have waited until 30 weeks, which would have been now, around now, for her to then get a house, but then I don't...
It's a tough one. It is a tough one. Like, I remember, it took me back. I completely forgot this. I'd done what you'd done. I had everything ready. This wasn't with Sarah. This was with my ex before Sarah.
Yeah.
Many years ago. We was at the estate agents in Sheffield. We sat there and we had this big red folder. This was the
scary, isn't it?
visit.
Like when you're talking about these numbers,
we left there. This is how scary it could have been, right? We left there with this folder. All we had to do was sign it. But for some reason, because it was so scary and we didn't understand half the stuff this guy was saying, I was plastering at the time. I was also at college, getting the trade, but I was also working in the background as well, obviously, whilst I was learning plastering. We left there with this folder to sign. And I'm not joking, if we'd have just went home, signed it, and then brought it back, I'd have literally been screwed. We left it about a week because we wanted my dad to look for it. Yeah. My ex wanted her dad to look for it. We wanted our parents to just skim through just to make sure we was doing the right thing. This is when the recession hit. This must have been...
2008?
Yeah, that was...
Yeah, it's later than that, I believe.
No, I think the housing crisis was a little bit after that, wasn't it?
No, before. There was one before. You're talking like 3 years before, because Mason was born in 08. So it was about 3 years before that. It was massive. But basically, for those that are self-employed, you'd know exactly what I'm talking about if you're around the age that I am or older. But literally, there was no work for about 3 months. There was nothing, no plastering, no building work going on. Recession hit. I had no money coming in. If I would have signed that folder, I would have literally been screwed. I'd probably got the house taken off me before I'd even got it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. How scary is that? And that's what made me think, do you know what?
It's unpredictable.
I'm one of these people, I do not want ties to this country, not because I've got anything against it. I don't want ties in any country. I don't want to have a property unless I'm a millionaire and I can have 5 of them that I can just, and I've got someone that can just sort out bits for me. Do you know what I mean? But I don't want to be tied down. I want to be able to travel. When the kids get to a certain age, I want to be able to know that I can move out and go travelling for 2 years, 3 years and live in a motorhome or something rather than have something. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be tied down to anything. And the beauty of what you said, like if I go out to work and stuff, that's something that I'm just going to hold on to because that is stability for me. And I know if the worst case scenario, obviously I'd get another job and I wouldn't rely on the government to pay my bills. But I know that I've got a little stepping stone, a little bit of breathing time to look for another job.
Without you're not going to lose the house.
Yeah. How nice is that? But you could have waited, Leon. You said you was about to go on the or you could have potentially went on the council. It sounds like I've got the perfect house and all this sort of stuff. I have now, but we had 8 years in a 2-bed masonette ground floor flat with 2 young children, and I put up with a neighbour from hell for 2 years.
But this is also, sorry Max,
this
is also the thing. So like for me, I was quite happy to move anywhere and just like just see what happens, see what we get. But Kareem was like,
This is Kareen that won't take the £170 table set, but wants the £430 table set.
And I can vouch, I've sat on both. And they are no different, Creed. No different. It's just a price tag.
So for her, it was a fear of the fear of not having a choice where you put.
Yeah, and that's big.
Making it sound like a snob, but it was more the fear.
No,
it was
it's not snobbish,
fear.
Leon. It's not snobbish at all. The thing is, the only reason we didn't go down that road because we had no choice.
Yeah.
So we needed somewhere. So our first
100%.
place, going back 9 years, I got placed in Hampton. They tried putting us in Dunstable, but Sarah didn't drive, and obviously we've grown up here. The kids, we both had work here, and then we got the keys to the place in Potton. We literally moved into that place. You've both been there. You've seen it. It was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah,
What it was, it suits young people, old people, because it's ground floor. It had a lovely big back garden, big solid walls, huge living room, huge main bedroom, and a smallish second bedroom. But it was a ground floor masonette, so there's no privacy, there's no space really. We said we was only going to live there, Adam, for two years max. 9 years later,
Yeah, I've been 11 myself,
we was
yeah.
there. But the thing is, we got so comfortable. It wasn't until we got our new place. We then realised that what we've got in our new house, we was living in just the ground floor. Our ground floor of our new house is the size of the flat that we spent 8 years in with 2 young kids, and they were sharing a bedroom. So it got to the point where legally they weren't allowed to share a room, but they were still sharing a room illegally for a year and a half because there was nothing available. So we still had to wait because of the shortage of houses and stuff that's available locally.
I just want to, I do want to tap into the neighbour from hell thing, but before if you want to, but before I get to that, I just wanted to bring Jack in because I remember maybe 2 months ago you were quite enthusiastically talking about getting a place of your own. I think you had almost like picked one out, and I wondered what kind of stage. But you're also part of the group here as someone who hasn't got a property at the moment.
Yes.
I'm kind of wondering what it's like from your perspective.
Bought a tent.
Yeah, I've got a tent. It's got a log
Although
burner.
I know you want to travel as well, so
Yeah, so the flat, you know me, Adam, I'm like my mum, idea to idea. But moving out it is something that I've always wanted to do. And like, because I've been working for 5 years now, like I actually have got some cash ready to sort of go on a house. But finding the right one, and like you say, like going there and making that decision to actually put the money that you've saved down on this house and committing to that for the next 20 years. Well, it's not 20 years, but in the contract it says that, doesn't it? Like, it's quite a big thing. So I've decided that moving out's not for me. Not yet. I do want to go do a little bit of travelling with no ties, like you say. And then maybe when I come back, hopefully, after this virus, hopefully for me anyway, housing price has gone down a little bit. I might have to sneak up a little cheeky flat.
Do you think that'll happen? I think it will.
I think it'll go
It's
down.
got to, hasn't it?
Well, the housing
It
price.
has to.
I don't think it will.
No,
You don't think?
but think of the current situation. We're talking about this lost generation, the young people, how it's going to affect their education, their employability, therefore the chances of actually getting the money to buy it. They've got to look at all that. Also, they've got to look at the economy and how much impact this has had on just everything. We was talking about it. We've spoke to people, right, that have in businesses.
It may go down a little bit, but from far as I'm aware, we're in housing shortage in the UK.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
so
everywhere.
like, they're building everywhere. Like apparently, we won't catch up till 2050.
That's what I mean. We are built. Oh, really? Jeez.
I don't know how true this is, but they reckon they have to build 17 million houses in China alone just to accommodate the growth of population. Is that something that sounds on?
That doesn't sound too far fetched, really.
17 million.
They did put a ban on having more than one kid.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
I just wonder, like, with the amount of deaths that we're experiencing with the virus at the minute, cynically, there might
I
be
was gonna
some
think that.
properties available.
But not just that, like less people are going to be buying houses because they're less financially stable, which means there's going to be a build-up of houses that aren't selling.
Yeah.
So then it'll get to a point where...
All I'm saying is,
I know
if
someone
it
that had a house
happens-
in sale. Sorry, Max.
Go on.
Do you wanna go?
No, that's
So I've got a friend that selling a house in a town not too far from here, and he tried to sell it 3 times
Oh, you said
within the last month, and he's had a buyer 3 times within the last month. So the first one just fell through. Second one, they wanted to buy it, but they found out who his neighbour was and didn't want to move. They didn't want to move there.
Neighbour from hell.
And so all within a month, they had 3 applications of people that wanted to buy the house for full price, and that is directly after
Yeah, but
still in lockdown.
what if they tried to sell it before lockdown?
No, they put it up for sale during lockdown, and it's still sold for full price.
Yeah. You'll always get people buying.
Yeah.
No matter what time of the year, what's going on, because there's people that have got money. That's what I was about to say. If it does drop, which I do believe it will, it's going to have to. They're going to have to do something. They might not drop, but they might do more schemes, like more better schemes, more incentives and stuff.
For the housing, when you say it has to drop, like the housing market, like it's individuals that are in control of it. It's not like one person or one group of people that are in control of it, because you can decide how much you sell your house for.
What happens when one person or two people, then three people start dropping? We are sheep, Leon. We know this. We've talked about it before. Everyone will start doing it, because if they don't, their properties won't be selling. There's always cheaper areas to buy. This is not a new thing that it drops. It'll crash for the simple reason that if it doesn't, it's going to mess up the whole of the economy. And going back 15, 20 years, I don't know this guy on a personal level other than a family friend, but there's a couple of people my dad knows, my uncle being one of them actually, when this sort of thing happened about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, it might have been the recession. They bought 10, 15 properties. They took a gamble. They went out, a bit like Trump did when it happened way back in the day, and they just bought up loads of buildings. Minted now. They are absolutely minted, because they just see an opportunity. Like how nice it'd be to have that money in the bank where you go, or have the opportunity to borrow that much money, because I think a lot of them borrowed it. So they took someone said gamble earlier. It's all a gamble. If you're willing to take that gamble,
it's not really though. You might buy it for like 200 grand. 3 years later, it's worth 180, and you're like, I've lost 20 grand. But again, you could just wait another 10 years if you got that time, and it will go up. Like, it was always going up.
Someone said to me about 8 years ago, the guy I used to plaster with, he used to say to me, Max, if you've got property, you've got gold. It's like, you look at what people used to look at as treasures and stuff like that. He goes, property is never going to lose. It may differ, it may go down, they may have crashes, but you will always make money from it.
I believe that.
And he said that 10 years ago, and he ain't wrong.
Yeah, I became acutely aware of how much my flat is worth at the moment, and because I've got a lot of younger friends because of the hobbies I'm into, I witnessed a lot of them house hunting who had lived in Milton Keynes. I live in Milton Keynes. Could not live in Milton Keynes. The prices were just too high, and there's a sense I feel a little bit privileged to be in Milton Keynes, this kind of quite sought after, quite kind of affluent area from a housing point of view. I know it's got its problems as well. It's not perfect, but it suits me so well. I can't convey how well this place suits me. Right? If I was, and I'm in a flat, so the expectation perhaps is that you move on to like house, that kind of thing, and I can't see that as an option. Although my flat has increased in value, if I was to buy a property in Milton Keynes, it wouldn't be enough for me to continue to live in Milton Keynes because of how high the prices are. So all my mates have moved out of... So imagine like growing up in an area and you kind of expect to probably be there, and then actually you can't afford to be there, so you got to move out of that area. So it's like moved to Bedford and so on. And actually if you just go slightly north, it gets a lot cheaper, which is a few other people have done.
Yeah, I can agree with that. So I grew up in Hertfordshire, so Letchworth, and I can count about 5 friends that have all moved to like Biggleswade, Shefford, Sandy, St Neots, all because of like cheap housing prices. So like my sort of old friendship group is sort of moving. We're all sort of moving in the same direction. It's
do you know the pattern of it though? Like, because obviously it gets cheaper. That St Neots, I believe, from what I know,
away from London, isn't it?
Yeah, the furthest you are away from London, the cheaper it is, isn't it? Because St Neots is so much cheaper than Biggleswade, and it's like, why? Why is it cheaper to buy? Yeah. One of my mates, one of Steph's brother, he moved down. I remember having a chat with him. He's like, it's honestly, the prices are so much cheaper than anywhere else around here. It's crazy. Yeah. But then you look at it, and it is for that reason that it's an extra 10 minutes away from it. It's like, what? That's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. And I suppose
about that train line.
That's why Milton Keynes is probably so expensive to live, because of how convenient that area is for the commuters and all that sort of stuff. It's just,
and you also get robots that deliver your food.
They are becoming quite common. I've seen them often.
The other day,
the little white boxes driving down the road.
I was out on my bike and I literally stopped because one had approached another, and I was like, "What's going to go on here?" Like, and they sat there like almost like a Mexican standoff with like little wheeled robots.
Or they was having a conversation.
I was like, like running the algorithms of like, this is a problem. How do we get to the solution?
Right. Number two. There's a guy on a bike coming behind us. It could potentially be a robber. So just get ready. Get ready.
Apparently, if you approach him, they start talking shit. It's like, please step away from the vehicle.
I haven't had that yet, but I've seen people like wanting to test them, like, because we're all quite fascinated. Like, what happens if? It's like getting a puppy, or like, what happens if I do this or that? Don't know why I use the analogy puppy. But yeah, with the robots, they just potter about. It's a little bit like a part of the landscape now. I'm slightly more
Adam,
used to than I used to be.
They're everywhere. And the drones, that is the future, is it not?
Max has got obsessed
with
for
upgrades.
those that are listening with
Anyone
this new movie.
that hasn't seen it, watch Upgrade, because I'm telling you now, the future is near. The future is Upgrade. It's happening. I can see it. Maybe 5-10 years.
Bit of context, Max. What is it about?
Don't need to just watch
No?
it.
All right.
Yeah, it's in binge watch box sets.
It's just futuristic. It's based, I don't know what year it's based in, but it's definitely based in the future. And it's all to do with a microchip called STEM that's implanted into a body to control the body and make the body more advanced. So, for example, a paraplegic could end up using his legs and arms and stuff.
Why did you point towards Leon when you said that?
No, because he's doing this.
Oh,
I was looking at that and I think I'm on 32 minutes.
I thought you were referencing those horrific accident he had last year.
I was like, 32 minutes?
Yeah.
So do you know what? I thought it was longer than 32 minutes because I looked at my phone and it's like 45, but I know we didn't hit record. But yeah, I think we just carry on. Well. No, so basically, it's genetically formed to empower the body in create a better human body, which ends up backfiring and becoming a bit of a nuisance and taking over the body fully. It's very scary to think that could potentially happen, and I do certainly believe that is potentially will be the near future, something along those lines. Especially when you look at the drones and the robots that are in that movie. They're everywhere, and you look at the skyline and it's just drone. You are under surveillance 24 hours a day. There is no... China, for example, at this current time, there's people walking around in China that will not take off the sunglasses and face masks. Why? Because the surveillance and stuff and the... whatever they call it.
That's what they're trying to put in Hong Kong, isn't it? That's why they're
Hong-
having all their protests.
That's it. That's going on now, and that was on Upgrade. Like obviously, that's part of that. You can't go anywhere, and we're pretty much under Big Brother, the eye, anyway, aren't we?
Your tinfoil hat's a bit wonky, mate.
Put it on. Yeah, see,
So back to the housing market.
yeah.
Hey, should we talk about some numbers? Should we talk about some numbers?
I
Yeah.
wanted the best one I wanted you to come out with, Leon, was the average income a year,
So before this conversation, we just did a bit of Googling.
Google.
Just to find out some facts that we think that might help us with the conversation. So we sort of found out, so the average earnings is 29,500. That's per year. So we were just like sort of talking about that, and then to get a mortgage, it's normally roughly around 4 times that. That's how much you'd sort of get accepted, sort of credit sort of wise for. So it's just, I don't know. Yeah.
All right. So what's that? So 4 times, let's say 30 grand. So that's 120 grand that you can probably get accepted for. Plus you've got to put a deposit down.
Say 10, 11.
So so then let's say, what house in our area can you buy for 120 grand? You can't.
Not a lot. It's flat.
Yeah, you get a flat.
A very small flat.
Yeah, very small flat. And a 2-bed flat, probably averaging around 180 to 200 grand in it.
Yeah. I'd say between 150 maybe, if for like the lower budget ones. Yeah.
So let's say like you want to move out of a friend. That's probably a little bit more feasible because you can take 100 grand each.
Yeah.
So that's possible. But if you're like single parent, need to move out, you need a bedroom for your kid. How are you meant to afford that?
Man, I don't want to say it's impossible,
but it's very close.
It's because obviously if you've got a dependent, but like if you are like with a partner or something like that. But same again, like I don't know many friends that have managed to buy their own house without help, which is fine. Like can't knock them for it, because if they've got a parent, if I had enough money to help my son or daughter when I'm older, I will 100% help them. But it does allow them to be able to get different houses and stuff.
That's what I mean. All you need is that stepping stone. You could afford the monthly payments on your own.
Yeah.
But you can't afford to do it because your wage isn't enough, almost.
Yeah.
So like you can actually afford it, but they're telling you that you can't afford it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was most terrified about is, yes, I can afford to pay my mortgage, but I can do nothing else with my life for 20 years. You know, that was the kind of feeling that I was getting to, where it was like, hang on a minute, I've just worked out my monthlies, you're like, all my bills, blah, 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 and it doesn't leave me with much at all. And with the shared ownership property, it did allow for that. It allowed me to have like my outgoings, and I'm happy to say this, is about 500 quid a month. That is for the rent, which is about half roughly, and then the mortgage is about half. So that's so with times that I've earned money, it's always been a proportion of that, probably about half, let's say. So I have other spend. I wouldn't be too like frivolous with the money. You know, I'm very conscious of it, and there's been times where I've been out of work where I've been terrified and all that. And but yeah, that's what I wonder. I wonder what the mindset of young people are about a property. I wonder if it's like a pie in the sky kind of thing, something that just seems so far away. Like there's no way. It's intimidating. You know, are they being forced into the only possibility of being like rented accommodation through the council? You know, that kind of stuff.
Well, for me, if you'd asked me that question at 20, maybe 24, I'd have been like, yeah, it's impossible. It's never happening. Mum probably just got divorced around then, so I was like, it's just not happening, basically. I say divorce.
There's a sense of like you've resided yourself to that as a possibility. Like you just accept it almost.
Yeah, it's sort of like, because I'd always sort of lived at home. It was sort of at that point I sort of realised, unless I do something myself, like, will I ever have like, maybe, because I can sort of sometimes look at a mortgage as like a nest egg. Like, so worst comes to the worst, if you had to set up everything, you've got like a little bit of money behind it.
Investment,
so not even, almost like a savings account that you have to pay extra interest into each month.
It's a good way of looking at it.
But yeah.
Some people look at it like a pension almost, because they know that by the time they get to that point where they're retiring, they're going to sell up and get a smaller place. So the money they'll make from that is like a comfy little, I've just got 60 grand or 30 grand in the bank, because that's the sort of money you can make from property. Like, it's not just pennies. You're talking 20s, 30s, 40s, 40 grands. Like, literally, I think my brother, Ben, our older brother, literally made off the house that they bought, and he got a good deal because he bought it off my dad, our old family home. He got like 20 grand off or something, but within 2 years, him and his mate, and this is what I was going to come on to next, because someone mentioned it earlier about moving in with your mates, but they went in joint together. And they made like 60 grand in a year or 2 years on that property. It literally jumped up massively. It's huge. But how long did their friendship last for? A year. Literally, they was at each other's throats. So is anyone here opted or thought about moving in with their friends? Has anyone done it, or does anyone know anyone that's done it? Because I do, and not one case has come out good.
I nearly did, and like in the early days before I lodged, I was going to move in with my mate Scott. We looked at properties in Hemel Hempstead, and I had this like real epiphany as I was in the town centre and we were looking around. I was aware of net curtains sort of billowing out some of the cheap flats that sat above shops. There was a guy walking around behind a young girl with his trousers undone. There was somebody else that was coughing up like phlegm onto the floor. And this was around the area we could only afford to kind of get. And like it was such an epiphany in the sense of don't do this. And I'm not necessarily a fatalist, but I know that would have never worked out because he lives in New Zealand now. So things would have, changed anyway. So I'm like really glad that I didn't run with that. But yeah, I know a bunch of people that there's the negotiation that's needed. I think when you live with someone, that is the challenge that stretches any friendship.
I think, it'll test any friendship. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but I think with the young people and what we're looking and talking about, they're probably going to be more inclined to look at that pathway because it shares the cost and all that stuff.
Yeah, I imagine it being tempting.
Without looking at, actually, can we live together every day for the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, I was thinking about like the two boys that we got with the last program that we're going to move in together.
That's mental. I was literally thinking that exact thing. That's crazy. Then I started to think about Jack's mates, and then I'm thinking, because you was on about doing it, and I thought you could have the best mates in the world, but living with someone can change that.
There is literally only one person I think that I could probably live with, like I could say definitely, and that's Callum. Smith. Just because he's so like, he's just not messy, he's clean, and he's just straight down. All he does is want to go to work, he wants to make money, and he just wants to chill.
But then you got you that's so messy, so unclean.
No, that's absolutely right, Max. But in that relationship,
I did remove a banana skin from the podcast room the other day.
I did eat it. I was saving it for later.
A skin.
Oh yeah, I ate it.
Yeah.
Oh wait, you removed.
There was
the skin.
A banana and a skin.
Okay, but not separate. They weren't separate. There was a full banana and a skin.
That's right. Never mind.
Yeah, I did leave the skin there.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'd say like maybe going back a little bit as well, to say like if you are thinking it's maybe out of reach, once you start saving and you have got a little bit, you can do it. You just need to start it.
You got to really think about it.
The hardest bit is actually if you plan a little bit and you can understand.
What's the first thing they could do, Leon? The first thing they could do, what you said earlier, create a cash flow.
Yeah.
Even if it is pennies is coming in, or even if there's no money coming in, work out what you would potentially need as a goal, and then sort of start setting your sights on potentially earning that? I don't know.
A few tips that I could give, which I done: get a couple different bank accounts, so then like you can separate like your bills to your spending money. So then you've only got your card on you that you want to spend. Like your actual money on, like your everyday money on. So if you're going to Greg's or something like that, and then
I've got on that though. This just brought back a story from someone that I know personally. So this guy earned loads and loads and loads of money.
Yep.
He's got the scrap metal firm in Biggleswade, and you're talking like 20, 30 grand he had saved in the bank. He couldn't get a house. He had loads of money coming in, and this was going back about 10 years or something, but because basically the bank said to him, you've got nothing, you've got no paper trail. Like, so you've never had a contract, phone, you've never had a credit card. So what did he have to do? He had to get a contract, he had to get a credit card, started paying his food shopping on the credit card just to pay it off, even though he didn't need a credit card, just to be able to get a house because he wasn't on the paper trail.
But he should have been playing the game.
Yeah,
if you don't know that, so what I'm saying is, if you haven't got a credit card, I'm not saying credit card's a bit of it's a dodgy one to offer people to recommend because it can get you in so much debt.
Never had one.
Simple thing
Okay,
like phone
overdraft.
contracts.
You've had overdraft
Yep.
and you've had a contract. That's enough to create a paper trail of yourself. So if you haven't got something that
maybe not a credit card.
direct debit,
Get a
I do
phone
not
card.
recommend credit cards in any way, shape, or form.
Phone contract.
Phone
Contract.
Phone contract, and if you are self-employed, I'm assuming he was.
Yeah.
You just make sure you've got your paper trail set up. So if you are planning, you might need to be planning like 3 or 4 years ahead if you have got that much money.
So I guess just to kind of wrap up a little bit here as well is what we're saying is that it's totally possible. It just takes a lot of planning, and I think what we hoped for with this podcast was to offer the perspective. Like, we've got rental, we've got shared ownership, we've got people thinking about doing it, and not to be intimidated by the process and not to abandon the idea. I think because we all really like the fact that we've got properties or thinking about getting one, and I think with you, Jack, I don't feel any resistance from you. I think you think it's totally possible. It's just not the right time at the moment, kind of thing. So, for those that are listening, it is possible, and maybe there's some unknown quantities coming up with kind of COVID and economy and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's a sense for me of just don't dismiss it and don't avoid it as an idea because it seems so impossible. It just takes a sense of planning and asking people and maybe tapping up some relatives or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's also no wrong way to do it, I suppose. If you want to, whichever route you decide is
it'll be the right one.
Like we
you.
say in everything, just don't go into it blind. Like literally do a bit of research, do a little bit of reading. Don't sign on the dotted line within the first flipping meeting or interview or whatever it is. Just literally, just go into it with a little bit of savvy and a little bit of research.
Yeah, one thing I would say as well, regardless of property or anything like that, the best way to save is as soon as you get that money, no matter how much it is, just put the tiniest bit away, even if it's 50 quid, if that's all you can afford, just 50 quid, just put it to the side and forget about it. It's done. It's just there, and then just keep doing that.
Yeah, you don't need the next Call of Duty game, really.
Also, don't get yourself a dog until you're fully comfortable, because that is something that I did Google. The average cost of to own a dog is 17 grand a year.
Yeah.
What?
17 grand a year. Is that a year?
Yeah.
17 grand a year. So that's obviously food, the vet bills and all that sort of stuff. And that's just the dog. The average cost of living for a family of 4, for example, or for a family in the UK is...
Okay, I've changed it.
Like,
no.
ridiculous. Like
that's over a lifetime.
Oh, sorry, it's lifetime, not a year.
Yeah.
It's lifetime.
I was looking at that like, bub, what is wrong with that dog? Has he got like hernias every couple of months?
Straight from Google. No, there's not. Yes, that's a lifetime.
It's a wolf.
17 grand for the lifetime, which is cool. I love the dog stuff,
but still, 17 grand, man.
But you want to get comfortable before you...
You get a Hellcat for that.
Yeah. And another thing really is, I say we're probably not experts on this, but we are real people just going through real situations.
Yeah.
And life happens.
Trying to make it a little bit easier for other people.
And like I'm saying, it's as life happens, it hits you in different ways, and you'll end up taking different routes.
But we've also seen that there's a lot of support, whether it's the schemes, the help to buy, whether it's the council, if you sort of need support in that way. There's so much support out there. Your mum and dad, the family and friends and stuff. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way that a lot of people get through life is with the support from the elders above them. But not everyone's got that. And those that haven't, for someone like Sarah, for example, that got the support from the council when she come over, moved down from London, bless her, all them years ago. But she did, and she didn't have nothing. She had black bags and all this sort of stuff. She got kicked out. I don't want to go too deep because
Another day.
That's
For another day.
But she
Yeah,
got
not-
the support that she needed. Some people say, "Oh, there's no support out there." There is.
You gotta
just
look
got to
for
go
it.
the right way about it.
Mm.
You literally
Got to play the game, research.
Maybe another day we'll come back to the nightmare neighbours as well. I know we banned
Oh,
that,
yeah.
but let's
Yeah.
leave that. I'm curious because I'm curious about a subject of living with other people, you know, neighbours or whatever, and that gamble element
That
to
would
it
take
as well.
a whole
So
podcast.
that'll
for
be
that
another one.
That will be a
I
whole
look forward to that.
podcast.
Watch this space.
Yeah,
All right,
man.
shall we
All
finish
right,
up?
cool.
guys?
Cool.
Thanks for listening.
Nice.
See you soon.